In a time and place far removed from our own, there lived a man named Job. Job was a man of great wealth, of tremendous influence, and, most importantly, of unshakable faith. Job wasn't just any man. He was the kind of man people looked up to, the one everyone respected, admired, and maybe even envied. In his time, Job had everything: a loving family, a prosperous livelihood, and a reputation for being righteous and wise. If you needed advice, you went to Job. If you needed help, Job was the first to extend a hand. His life was the very picture of prosperity and godliness. But what Job didn't know was that he was about to face a trial unlike anything he'd ever imagined. Now, one day, in the heavenly courts, something extraordinary happened. God, looking down upon Job, was filled with pride and admiration. "Look at my servant Job," he said. "There's no one on earth like him, blameless, upright, and filled with reverence." But one of the celestial beings, known as the adversary, wasn't impressed. The adversary questioned Job's faith, saying, "Well, of course he's faithful. Look at all he has. You've protected him, blessed him, made him rich. Take it all away, and let's see how loyal he really is. Take away his comfort, and I bet he'll curse you to your face." And so God allowed it. He didn't cause Job's suffering, but he permitted it as a test of faith, knowing Job's strength and resilience. "Do as you will," God said, "but do not harm him physically." And with that, the cosmic wager began. Job's life took a swift, unimaginable turn. It began one day as he was going about his business, when a messenger came running, terrified, breathless. "Job," he cried, "your oxen and donkeys have been stolen, and your servants, they've been slain." Before Job could even begin to understand, another messenger arrived. "Job, disaster has struck. Fire from the sky has burned up your sheep and shepherds." And then, another, and another. News of one calamity after another. A whirlwind had destroyed his property, his servants, and finally, in a gut-wrenching blow, his children. Every one of his beloved children gone in a single tragic instant. It was an avalanche of devastation. His wealth, his family, his happiness, all stripped away in a matter of moments. Job's world had crumbled, but even in the depths of his grief, Job did something unexpected. Instead of cursing or blaming God, Job knelt down, tore his robe in mourning, and spoke these words: "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Seeing that Job remained steadfast in his faith, the adversary returned to the heavenly court, still not satisfied. "All right," he said, "Job hasn't cursed you yet, but that's only because he's still healthy. Let me touch his flesh and bones, and then we'll see his true colors." And so it was that Job was struck with painful sores from head to toe. His body was tormented, his spirit crushed. He sat in the ashes, scraping himself with a shard of broken pottery, seeking some relief from the constant agony. It was then that even Job's own wife, seeing him suffer so greatly, spoke in despair. "Are you still holding on to your integrity?" she asked. "Curse God and die." But Job, though broken and weary, responded gently. "Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" Word of Job's suffering spread quickly, and 3 of his friends traveled from afar to comfort him. When they arrived and saw the depth of his pain, they were speechless. For 7 days and 7 nights, they sat with Job in silence, sharing in his grief. But eventually, the silence broke, and each friend began to speak, offering their thoughts on why Job was suffering so terribly. Eliphaz, the first to speak, suggested that maybe Job had sinned and was being punished. "Consider this, Job," he said. "Who, being innocent, has ever perished? If you were truly righteous, why would God let this happen?" Then Bildad and Zophar chimed in, echoing similar thoughts. They insisted that Job must have done something wrong to deserve such punishment. They couldn't accept that suffering could happen to a righteous person without reason. But Job held firm. He knew he was innocent and couldn't understand why he was suffering. In his anguish, he cried out to God, questioning, pleading, and trying to make sense of his ordeal. Yet even as he poured out his heart, Job never turned away from his faith. The conversations between Job and his friends turned into a heated debate, a debate that delved into questions as old as time itself. Why do the righteous suffer? Is suffering always a punishment for sin? Can we ever truly understand the ways of God? Job's friends insisted on their beliefs, refusing to let go of the idea that Job's suffering had to be his fault. But Job knew his own heart. He continued to cry out to God, seeking answers, even though the answers seemed impossible to find. He questioned, he doubted, he wept. But he never lost his faith. And then, in the midst of Job's deepest despair, something miraculous happened. God himself spoke to Job from within a whirlwind, a mighty storm. But instead of answering Job's questions directly, God posed questions of his own. "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?" God asked. "Who determined its measurements? Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons, or command the morning to rise? Have you an arm like God's, and can you thunder with a voice like his?" Job was speechless. God's words were a reminder that there were mysteries of the universe, wonders and complexities that only the Creator could comprehend. In his suffering, Job had demanded answers, but now he understood that the ways of God were beyond human reasoning. And he realized that perhaps some things in life would remain forever unanswered. Job spoke quietly, his voice trembling. "I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." After Job had surrendered his understanding and acknowledged God's wisdom, his life took a new turn. God restored Job's fortunes, double what he had lost. His lands flourished once more, his flocks multiplied, and his home was filled with joy and laughter. God gave him more children, blessing Job with a family and a long life filled with peace. Job lived to see his children's children to the fourth generation. And though he would never forget the trials he endured, he now had a new understanding, a faith that was unbreakable, rooted not in blessings but in trust, even through the unknown. Job's story isn't just a tale of suffering or a cosmic test of faith. It's a story of resilience, humility, and the search for meaning amidst the trials of life. In his darkest moments, Job wrestled with the hardest questions, wondering if he had somehow deserved his fate, or if there was any justice left in the world. But in the end, Job's story is a reminder that life's answers are not always as simple as we hope. Sometimes we face hardships that don't have neat explanations. Sometimes our trials serve a purpose we may never fully understand. And in those moments, faith becomes our guide, not a faith based solely on blessings, but a faith that endures in every season, through every storm. Through Job's story, we learn that it's okay to question, to doubt, and to seek answers. We learn that faith doesn't mean ignoring our pain or pretending to understand it all. True faith, as Job discovered, is about trusting in the one who holds all things, even when we can't see the way forward.